Hello, welcome back to Starts at 60 Banter. I'm Ian Skippen. Pleasure to be in your place again today, and something a little more serious as a topic. We've covered all sorts of things in recent weeks. Today, something a lot of us have had to deal with. An ageing parent, a partner, someone in our lives who has suffered to the point of death. It doesn't have to be that way, but laws don't let us do it any other way at the moment. Dying with Dignity Queensland, the President is Sharon Tregoning and joins us to talk about a controversial subject today. Hello Sharon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Dying with Dignity, how does someone so young get involved in something like this?
So young, bless you, thank you. I'm a bit of an anomaly in the movement for dying with dignity, shall we say. Most of the people who are actively involved have experienced firsthand a loved one's bad death. I actually don't have that. I've had quite a number of loved ones who've nicked off to the other side, but they haven't had the bad death, they've had good deaths. But I have, in a professional context, with some of the work that I do, I've seen a number of bad deaths and just felt that I have something to offer and want to be part of trying to make a difference.
See, I don't think there's any such thing as a good death. I think they're all bad because they come at unexpected times. But having said that, I've had a mother-in-law, a brother-in-law and a dad who've all been eased out, been made comfortable. So that is practiced every day around the world.
It is, and it's legal. And we have laws that protect our doctors and our other medical staff for that. And it's within the context of alleviating suffering, even if it hastens death. And that's perfectly okay. But not everybody can have the medications that are utilised in those instances, which is most commonly morphine. Half of my family are allergic to it, so they can't take morphine. So that would be an issue for us. And Palliative Care Australia also says that even with the best palliative care, and we have really good palliative care in Australia, we certainly need more, particularly in our rural and regional areas, but even with the best palliative care in the world, there's still about 4% of people that they're never going to be able to assist, and that represents very, very real suffering. So whilst the option is there and when it works, great, fabulous, it's not always an option.
Okay, so they call that double effect.
They do.
So that is not euthanasia?
No, it's not. The intent is to alleviate suffering, and the intent is the driver behind that mechanism. So that is a very, very different scenario.
All right, we have a federal parliament that's talking about plebiscites for same-sex marriage. We have this issue where it is not legal to euthanize in our country.
Correct.
There's a lot of talk about one and not a lot of talk about the other.
Oh, I think there's a whole lot more
talk happening. Is there a groundswell happening?
There is. Just need to raise with you though, this is a state issue, not a federal issue. So health departments and health governments are state level issue things. So there is that difference there. But there is a huge groundswell happening, and there's a big focus on this topic with thanks to Andrew Denton and everything that he's brought to the arena in the last 6-12 months. He did a fabulous podcast series called Better Off Dead. And he went to the overseas jurisdictions. He did the investigations of the arguments that are often placed against us with the purpose of finding out if there was any evidence to back these, and came up wanting. There is not the evidence to back the arguments. And if you look at places like Oregon, where voluntary euthanasia laws have been in place for 18 years, there's no issues.
So I guess ethically, religiously, there's all sorts of questions that can be asked. We don't have a right to end somebody's life, even if the person is suffering.
No. This is something that has to be self-directed. It cannot be a guardian or a power of attorney or anyone else. It has to be me as Jane citizen saying, this is what I want for myself. And that's one of the big safeguards that we need to have in place. So we don't have the situation of the relatives want to knock granny off so they can get to her money and that sort of thing. And it's a really important safeguard because this is about individual choice. It's not about someone else saying, okay, you're too much of a burden, off you go. So that's a really, it's a pillar of what we're wanting to achieve. It has to be directed by an individual saying, this is what I want for me.
If you've just joined us, Starts at 60 Banter today, Sharon Tregoning is from Dying with Dignity, Queensland. And a question, you may have had to go through this. You may have something that you'd like to contribute to an argument. You can join us on our Facebook page right now and ask the question or what it is that you have been going through on a personal basis with a loved one. What are the arguments?
Predominantly religious. And it's interesting, it's the hierarchy of the churches that are against it, not their parishioners. There was a news poll done in 2012 and they covered a broad range of topics or broad range of people within this topic of supporting voluntary euthanasia. And over 70% of people identified as Christian of some variety, whether it be Catholic, Anglican, what have you. There was almost 80% for it among those people who were questioned. So it's not coming from the congregations and the parishioners, it's the church hierarchy that's saying, no, this is not okay. And they're saying it's against God's will. Now, that's fine, that's your choice, but what about those of us who don't live according to those beliefs? Why should we be made to live according to those beliefs? Again, it's individual choice.
See, sometimes God's will, and you look at this and you think, okay, I have a relative who has dementia.
Yeah.
They might be happy in themselves, but the dignity of what they are going through has gone, long gone.
Yeah.
And you look at this person and think, can something, well, what do you do? If you had the pill, would you give it to that person?
No. Dementia is the really tough spot in this conversation because the legislation that we're proposing and the safeguards that we're wanting in this is that someone needs to be mentally competent. That doesn't happen with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Because somebody else has to make the decision.
Because someone else has to make the decision. And that's, to be blunt, that's a really crappy part of this situation. And there's not a lot we can do about that at this stage. It needs to be a mentally competent, terminally ill adult is the basis for legislation that we're seeking to create because it does need to have that individual aspect. Because you might start the process and then go, actually, no, I'm going to change my mind. If you've got someone who's pulling those strings, that individual doesn't have that ability to change their mind. So it's very much individual choice driven.
All right, so say you are suffering with something, you know it's terminal, you know it's down the track.
Yep.
How many people are now deciding, I'm not going to face that, I'm going to end it myself? Is that happening?
It is. In June, Victoria released a cross-party end-of-life committee that had spent 12 months investigating end-of-life choices. They went to overseas jurisdictions where this is happening and gathered a whole lot of research. One of the persons who provided information to that inquiry was Coroner John Olley. And some of the testimony that he gave was harrowing. They did a conservative analysis of looking at people who had committed suicide over a 4-year period and looked at what else was going on in their life. And they conservatively estimated that around 200 people over a 4-year period committed suicide who were otherwise, there was no mental health issues, this sort of thing, who were facing a decline in their health. So that's one a week, roughly, and that's just Victoria. So one would imagine it'd be a fairly conservative estimate to say 2 to 3 people a week are committing suicide. And it's in really harrowing situations and circumstances. One man was found hanging from a freeway overpass. Another man used a nail gun and he died from head and chest wounds as a result of the nail gun. Now, that's just...
To be driven to that extent.
To get to that stage where you feel that's your only option. And then for also the trauma left behind for his loved ones, number one, the ones who find them and everything else, instead of having an option to create a peaceful dying and death scenario. And again, people are dying sooner than what they need to because they have to do this while they're physically capable of taking such action. It's just horrendous.
So where are we at then? You say it is a state issue.
It is.
It's not a federal parliamentary issue. So do you lobby our
we
state
do.
government, and other state governments are being lobbied by like organisations.
Yeah, in South Australia there's currently a bill before their Parliament, so fingers crossed something happens there. In the last week...
Will it be like a domino effect if one falls?
Hoping so,
Yeah.
hoping so. In Victoria in the last week, around half of the Cabinet have come out and said, yes, we need to create end-of-life legislation that includes voluntary euthanasia, and that was one of the recommendations of the committee, the committee's report that was tabled in June. We are lobbying politicians. We're meeting with them to find out what the go is. We're meeting with other related bodies, so medical associations and so forth. We're getting our members to email their MP. We've got a campaign going at the moment, less than 30 seconds. They just have to put in their address, name, email. We've got a email already worded, click send. We've had over 480 of those go to our pollies at the moment. So we're raising the conversation level. We need our pollies to know that this is an issue that is not going to go away. California this year, Canada this year, there's over 100 million people around the world that have access to assisted dying legislation of some form, but no one in Australia.
So in the meantime, Dying with Dignity, if anybody has questions about this, they can contact the organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a Facebook page, which is Dying with Dignity QLD, and our website is dwdq.org.au.
It is a tough one. How are you dealing with it? What are your thoughts about this? Jump onto our Starts at 60 website. Well, you're there right now, our Facebook page, and you can certainly join the conversation. It's banter, that's what it's all about. Your thoughts, you might be totally opposed. As you know, it's a very divisive argument on quite a few grounds. So whatever your thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. And Sharon, thank you so much for joining us and enlightening us more about what is a touchy one, Dying with Dignity.
Thanks for having me, Ian.
Sharon Tregoning from Dying with Dignity, Queensland. Look forward to your feedback.